For centuries, the Vatican has stood as the heart of faith, power, and mystery, a fortress of secrets buried beneath marble and prayer. But what if behind those sacred walls lie truths that challenge everything we know about history, religion, and human belief itself? From the hidden remains of Alexander the Great to forbidden gospels that rewrite the words of Jesus, from Egyptian relics preserved by popes to saints whose bodies never decay, each secret reveals a world where faith and deception intertwine. Modern science has begun to peel back the layers, exposing forgeries, cover-ups, and knowledge long thought lost. Before we dive into these astonishing secrets, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Mysteries of Earth, your gateway to the hidden truths history tried to bury. Now step with us inside the shadowed corridors where holiness meets the unknown. For more than 2,000 years, the world has been haunted by a single unanswered question. Where lies the body of Alexander the Great? The man who conquered the known world before his 33rd year, whose name echoed through continents from Greece to India, vanished from history as mysteriously as he appeared. His death in Babylon in 323 BCE marked the end of an empire, yet the beginning of one of history's greatest enigmas. Ancient records tell us that Alexander's body was placed in a magnificent golden sarcophagus and taken to Egypt, a land he himself had once liberated and where he had been worshipped as a living god. The city of Alexandria, which bore his name, became the resting place of his embalmed remains. For centuries, rulers, scholars, and emperors journeyed there to pay homage, Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, and Augustus among them. But then something happened. Somewhere between the 3rd and 5th centuries, the trail went cold. The tomb that once inspired awe and reverence vanished from every record, as though deliberately erased from time. But what if the body of the great conqueror was never lost? A controversial theory whispers of a secret transfer, a theft cloaked in faith. According to this view, during the rise of Christianity, Alexander's tomb was desecrated, his remains stolen by a Venetian merchant seeking glory and protection. The embalmed body, still miraculously preserved, was brought to Venice, where it was mistaken for that of St. Mark the Evangelist. Inside the Grand Basilica di San Marco, a saint is worshipped, but beneath the golden mosaics and Byzantine arches, some believe it is not the apostles' remains that lie entombed, but those of Alexander himself. The measurements of the sarcophagus, the age of the relics, and certain Egyptian-style wrappings preserved within the reliquary have all fueled the speculation. Even the Venetian legend that a foreign body was smuggled from Alexandria and declared holy seems to align eerily with the timeline of Alexander's disappearance. If true, this would mean that for nearly a millennium, pilgrims, priests, and emperors have knelt before the embalmed remains of a pagan king, a conqueror deified by his people and reviled by his enemies, believing him to be a Christian saint. It is a possibility as unsettling as it is mesmerizing that the legacy of the man who dreamed of uniting East and West may still rest beneath the marble floors of Venice, hidden in plain sight. A symbol of power reborn as faith, a god-king rebaptized as a disciple, and somewhere, in the quiet shadows of the basilica, the spirit of Alexander the Great may still linger, not lost to time, but concealed beneath centuries of devotion and silence. Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has sought to understand the divine through stories, tales of gods, saviors, and miracles that give shape to the invisible. Yet across continents and centuries, these stories often echo one another in haunting ways. Among the most striking of these parallels lies between the ancient Egyptian god Horus and the story of Jesus Christ. Two figures separated by thousands of years, yet bound by uncanny similarities. Horus, the falcon-headed son of Isis, was worshipped more than 3 millennia before the rise of Christianity. His birth, as told in Egypt's sacred myths, was a miracle in itself. His mother, Isis, conceived him after reassembling the body of her slain husband Osiris and bringing him briefly back to life. The child that followed was said to be born of divine will, a son of God, destined to avenge his father and bring justice to the world. But what fascinates many scholars today is how his story, carved in stone and painted on temple walls long before the Gospels were written, seems to mirror key elements of the Christian narrative. Horus was said to have been born to a virgin mother named Mary. His birth was heralded by a star in the east, and his arrival was celebrated by 3 wise men who brought him gifts. He was a teacher who gathered followers, sometimes said to be 12 in number, and he healed the sick, restored sight to the blind, and raised the dead. In Egyptian texts, Horus battles darkness in all its forms, most notably his uncle Set, the god of chaos. Their struggle, a war between light and shadow, became the eternal symbol of good versus evil. And in the end, Horus is betrayed, killed, buried, and then resurrected, returning to life as the triumphant Son of God. When early researchers in the 19th and 20th centuries uncovered these parallels, many were shaken. Could the story of Jesus, central to Christian faith, have drawn from a much older spiritual template? Or are these connections the result of humanity's shared longing, a universal pattern through which civilizations express hope, redemption, and renewal? The Church, of course, rejects such comparisons, emphasizing that any resemblance is purely coincidental or the result of misinterpretation. Many Egyptologists argue that the Horus myth was never identical to the story of Christ, that later interpretations have blurred distinct traditions, yet the similarities that remain, from symbolic resurrection to divine birth, still ignite one of history's most profound debates. Are religions independent revelations from the divine, or are they reflections of one another, passed down like sacred echoes through the corridors of time? Perhaps, in the end, it is not about imitation, but resonance, a timeless rhythm that beats within the human soul. For whether called Horus or Christ, the story of the dying and resurrected God continues to remind us of humanity's eternal search for light within the darkness. There was once a place where the sum of all human knowledge was gathered beneath a single roof, a sanctuary of wisdom at the edge of the known world, the Library of Alexandria. In the 3rd century BCE, under the reign of the Ptolemies, this grand library rose beside the shimmering waters of the Mediterranean. Its white marble halls and towering columns welcomed scholars from Greece, Persia, Babylon, and India. Here, under the desert sun, knowledge became divine. It is said that over 400,000 scrolls lined its shelves, writings on medicine, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, mechanics, and history. It was more than a library. It was a universe written in ink and parchment, where humanity's greatest minds sought to understand the mysteries of creation. Among its visitors were names that would echo through eternity: Archimedes, Euclid, and Eratosthenes, who first measured the Earth's circumference with astonishing precision. But like so many wonders of the ancient world, the Library of Alexandria would meet a fate wrapped in mystery. The first catastrophe came in 48 BCE, when Julius Caesar's troops set fire to their own ships during the siege of the city. Flames spread, and the library's outer buildings were said to have burned with them. Yet, the great institution endured, wounded but alive. Centuries later, new conquerors arrived. As empires rose and religions changed, the library's vast knowledge became a target. To some, it represented enlightenment. To others, heresy. By the 4th century CE, as the old gods faded and Christianity spread across Egypt, pagan wisdom was declared dangerous. The Serapeum, the library's final surviving annex, was torn down by a Christian mob under imperial decree. The last guardians of the library were silenced, and so the light of Alexandria dimmed. Or did it? A haunting theory persists, that not all was lost to fury. Some scholars believe that before the destruction, Select manuscripts were spirited away, hidden from zealots who sought to erase them. Protected first in private collections, then within monasteries, and finally within the Vatican's secret archives. The Vatican Library, founded in the 15th century, houses millions of manuscripts, some dating back to the dawn of recorded history. Among them, rumors whisper, are scrolls written in languages long vanished, their origins older than Rome itself. Could these be the remnants of the Library of Alexandria, preserved in silence, guarded beneath the very institution that once condemned them? If so, then the Vatican may not only hold the relics of faith, but the lost memory of human civilization itself, a bridge between worlds forgotten, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. For in every flame that claimed a scroll, in every silence that followed, knowledge may not have died. It may have simply gone into hiding, waiting for those brave enough to seek it again. Hidden within the marble heart of the Vatican stands a place few ever speak of, a chamber where faith and empire quietly intertwine. The Gregorian Egyptian Museum, founded in 1839 by Pope Gregory XVI, it was built not only to preserve history, but to display Rome's reach across the ancient world. Step inside its silent halls, and you are transported to another age, an age of pharaohs, gods, and tombs. Here, the air is heavy with the scent of centuries. Beneath the glow of golden light, mummies lie entombed behind glass, their wrappings brittle with time. Statues of Horus, Isis, and Osiris gaze into eternity, their stone eyes carved in the age when the Nile ruled the world. There are sarcophagi etched with sacred hieroglyphs, fragments of temples, papyrus scrolls, and the relics of gods once worshipped under the desert sun. To a visitor, it feels like a temple of remembrance, a sacred effort to protect what remains of Egypt's past. But behind the beauty lies a deeper, more unsettling story. These relics were not brought to the Vatican by peaceful hands. They came through centuries of conquest, colonial exploration, and the plundering of ancient graves. When Rome conquered Egypt in 30 BCE, the treasures of the Nile began to flow north. Statues, scrolls, gold, even the mummified bodies of kings and priests. To the Romans, Egypt's mysteries were a prize, proof of domination over a civilization older than their own. By the 19th century, Europe's obsession with Egypt had become a fever. Archaeologists, collectors, and priests raced to unearth its secrets. Temples were dismantled, tombs emptied, and sacred artifacts sold to the highest bidder. Amid this fervor, the Vatican's Egyptian Museum took shape. Part sanctuary, part trophy room. Pope Gregory XVI saw the collection not merely as archaeological preservation, but as a way to showcase the Church's role as guardian and its ancient truth. Yet one cannot help but ask, who has the right to possess the past? Are these relics safe within the Vatican's marble walls, or imprisoned? The faces of the mummies, once buried to rest beneath the sands of Thebes, now lie under the gaze of Christian saints. The gods of Egypt, once worshipped in sunlit temples, now stand in the shadow of the cross. To some, the Gregorian Egyptian Museum represents humanity's triumph over time, a sanctuary where history is preserved from decay. To others, it is a reminder of our arrogance, how we claim ownership of worlds that were never ours. As you walk through its silent corridors, you cannot escape the feeling that something ancient still stirs here, that beneath the weight of faith and empire the spirits of Egypt remember. For even in the Vatican, far from the Nile, the whisper of the pharaohs endures. Beneath the golden sands of Egypt, where time buries both kings and secrets, a discovery once threatened to rewrite the foundations of faith itself. In 1945, near the small Egyptian village of Nag Hammadi, a farmer unearthed a clay jar sealed for nearly 2,000 years. Inside lay 13 leather-bound codices, ancient manuscripts written in Coptic, the language of early Christian Egypt. Among them was a text known as the First Apocalypse of James, a gospel that the Church had long declared forbidden. This mysterious work spoke of a Jesus unfamiliar to most, a teacher of hidden wisdom, speaking not of salvation through faith alone, but of liberation from an illusion. According to these words, the world was not the creation of a benevolent Father in heaven, but the work of a false God, a deceiver who trapped divine souls in flesh, binding spirit to matter. Earth, it claimed, was not paradise lost, but a prison built of light and shadow. To followers of this vision, the Gnostics, salvation meant awakening, freeing the spirit from the chains of the material world. Knowledge, not blind faith, was the key to escape. And in this revelation, Jesus was not merely a savior. He was a guide who revealed the path out of illusion. But such ideas were dangerous. They challenged the very structure of the early church, its hierarchy, its authority, its power. To suggest that the world was ruled by a false creator, that divine truth lay within the self and not in scripture or sacrament, was heresy of the highest order. And so, as Christianity took form in the 4th century under imperial Rome, these teachings were hunted down, declared blasphemous, and destroyed. The first apocalypse of James vanished from history until the desert returned it. The text describes an intimate conversation between Jesus and his brother James, in which he prepares him for persecution and the trials to come. But more striking than prophecy is the philosophy woven within, that the divine spark within each human must awaken to ascend beyond the false heavens, beyond the reach of the archons, the cosmic jailers of the soul. Why did the Church fear this message? Perhaps because it offered a faith without the need for temples, priests, or intermediaries, a truth that lived within every human being, a truth that no institution could control. Today, the first apocalypse of James rests in fragments, its words faded, its meaning still debated, yet the questions it raises remain timeless. What if the greatest heresy was simply knowledge itself? What if enlightenment, not obedience, was the true path to the divine? In the end, the sands of Egypt did more than preserve paper and ink. They preserved a voice the world was never meant to hear, a voice whispering across centuries. The truth is within you. Deep within the quiet corridors of the Vatican museums, past marble saints and centuries-old frescoes, stand two figures once thought to have witnessed the age of the pharaohs. For generations, they were admired as genuine mummies from ancient Egypt, relics of a civilization that shaped the dawn of faith and science alike. Their presence seemed to connect Rome, the seat of Christianity, with Egypt, the cradle of mystery. Yet beneath the linen wrappings and the reverent silence, a far stranger truth was waiting to be uncovered. When modern scientists were finally permitted to examine the mummies, expectations were high. Advanced imaging, radiocarbon dating, and DNA sequencing promised to reveal their secrets, perhaps the identities of forgotten nobles or priests who had crossed the Mediterranean centuries ago. But what the analysis uncovered shocked the world. These mummies were not Egyptian. Their DNA revealed they were European, born not in the age of pyramids, but in the late Middle Ages, only about 500 years ago. The revelation shattered centuries of assumption. The ancient mummies were, in fact, fakes, masterful fabrications crafted long after the fall of the pharaohs. But why would anyone go to such lengths to create false relics? The answer lies in a peculiar chapter of history known as mummy mania. During the 17th to 19th centuries, Europe was gripped by an obsession with all things Egyptian. Explorers returned from the Nile with sarcophagi, amulets, and embalmed remains, trophies of discovery and conquest. To own a mummy was to possess a fragment of eternity. Demand soon outstripped supply, and a dark trade emerged. Forgeries were crafted using the bodies of criminals, beggars, or even recently deceased Europeans, wrapped in linen, coated with bitumen, and aged with smoke or chemicals until they appeared ancient. Some were sold to collectors, or theirs to museums, and some, as history would have it, to the Vatican itself. Whether these forgeries were created with deception in mind or presented as genuine gifts remains uncertain, but within their story lies a powerful truth. Even the holiest institutions are not immune to the illusions of history. The Vatican, in its pursuit of preserving the past, had unknowingly safeguarded two of the finest examples of 19th-century archaeological deceit. Today, the two mummies remain on display, not as relics of ancient Egypt, but as reminders of human curiosity and the thin veil between faith and fabrication. They stand as silent witnesses to an age when science, superstition, and ambition blurred into one, when the desire to possess history sometimes led to its invention. And in their glass cases, beneath the soft museum lights, they still keep their secret well, that even false relics can hold a very real truth, that our hunger for the past can make us believe in anything, even ghosts we create ourselves. In the quiet halls of the Vatican, behind marble tombs and gilded altars, lie bodies that time seems to have forgotten. The faithful call them incorruptibles, saints whose flesh, against all laws of nature, refuses to decay. For centuries, these preserved figures have been seen as proof of divine favor, tangible evidence that holiness can transcend the grave. Pilgrims gather before glass coffins and radiant shrines, whispering prayers to faces untouched by death. Yet beneath the sacred glow of candles, a more complex truth lingers, one shaped as much by science as by faith. Among the most striking examples is that of Pope John XIII, whose body, displayed beneath St. Peter's Basilica, remains astonishingly intact decades after his passing. Visitors marvel at his serene expression, the rosary resting gently in his hands. To many, he is a living miracle. But behind the scenes, experts quietly admit that preservation, not divine intervention, may be the reason his body endures. The Vatican has never fully disclosed its methods, but accounts from mortuary specialists and church insiders suggest a secret practice rooted in ancient knowledge, techniques drawn from the same civilization that mummified its pharaohs under the desert sun. The Egyptians perfected the art of halting decay more than 3,000 years ago. Through a mixture of oils, salts, and resins, they could preserve the body so perfectly that skin, hair, and even features endured across millennia. Within the Vatican's inner circles, similar principles are believed to have been adapted, not to glorify the dead, but to honor the holy. Over 30 church figures, from cardinals to canonized saints, are said to have undergone these secret embalming rites. Their bodies, infused with preservatives and sealed in temperature-controlled coffins, became symbols of eternal faith. But in preserving their remains, the Church also preserved a paradox. For if divine incorruption can be replicated by human hands, where does the miracle end and the science begin? Is it faith that keeps these bodies whole, or chemistry quietly working in the shadows? The faithful are rarely told. Officially, the Vatican attributes these marvels to divine mystery, while discreetly maintaining a small team of conservators who ensure that time does not undo what ritual once began. It is a careful balance, reverence preserved through secrecy, holiness maintained through artifice. And yet perhaps it is not deception, but devotion. Perhaps the true miracle lies not in untouched flesh, but in humanity's endless desire to defy impermanence, to see in the still faces of saints a promise that life, in some form, endures. For as the centuries pass and the world changes beyond recognition, these incorrupt bodies remain, silent, motionless, but powerful. Whether sustained by God or by human hands, they remind us of the oldest question of all. Where does the divine end? And where do we begin? The Vatican is more than a center of faith. It is a vault of mysteries, where history, devotion, and secrecy converge. From the stolen remains of a legendary conqueror to forbidden teachings of Jesus, From ancient Egyptian relics to saints preserved against time itself, these 7 secrets reveal a side of the Church few have seen, and even fewer can truly understand. Each story reminds us that knowledge is fragile, history is layered, and what we are allowed to see is only part of the truth. If these revelations made you pause, wonder, or question the world around you, then you are not alone. Make sure to like this video, share it with fellow seekers, and subscribe to Mysteries of Earth, where forgotten stories, hidden truths, and ancient enigmas come alive. Stay curious, and let history's secrets guide you beyond the surface of what we think we know.